Hello.
G'day, mate. What is news?
Today we are speaking to a guy who calls himself a recovering man-child.
Yeah, I'm still recovering from that one myself.
Yeah, we need to delve into this a little bit. But his name's Zachary Watson. He's got a whole platform dedicated to the mental load that you put upon your partner for both men and women. And we're going to chat to him today on the Brown Pack Podcast.
The Brown Pack Podcast.
Question.
I'm a little bit scared, but hit me.
Well, today we're talking to Zachary Watson. He's what he calls a recovering man-child or a self-confessed man-child. And we're talking about the mental load that you put upon your wife or your partner.
Mm-hmm.
You are...
Oh, hey, just choose your words very carefully now.
You are, by definition, a man-child.
Correct. And I make no apologies for it. I'm a fun spirit.
You've toned it down a little bit recently.
Mm-hmm. True.
And I think that's possibly because of A, job, B, my incredible influence, and C, and C, ADHD meds.
Okay, so let's just reverse engineer that. Yes, it's from the meds.
Yep.
I'm able to capture certain behaviours before they come out for the world to see.
Because it has caused friction before, has it not?
All the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm surprised that I'm still married. I mean, we've been together 20 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And the stupid shit that I've done, and it's just childish shit. Even try to have a serious conversation with me. There's always some dumb joke that'll derail what she's trying to say.
Can I just say, just before we got onto this podcast, I was talking to your lovely wife, Casey, and you were in the back trying to dry hump her head from a distance. So that is what we deal with. Zachary, or Zach Watson, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me.
Pleasure. Tell us the Zach Watson story, because you are a recovering man-child. That's what you say.
Well, and before you speak, this is exactly why we got you on, because I'm still a man-child and I'm working through it. So tell us about you and you can help us.
Sure. It's interesting. I think this is of the 10 podcasts I've been on in the past maybe year or so, this is the first one that's been run by men. So it's glad to see that men are also leaned into this conversation. Men's podcasts, it's all women podcasts that have had me on so far.
Yeah, right. How funny. Well, we're trying to train the brain of some men then.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's start the story with, how did you determine that you are a man-child and needed to do something about it?
I think it honestly started when I read the Fair Play book. So back in 2021, our daughter was born and I was on paternity leave and started making content on TikTok mostly about just being a new dad, what that was like. And so in that time, I started developing a following mostly of women that were kind of showing my videos to the men in their lives and saying like, wow, look at what he's doing, which was certainly an ego stroke. But at the same time, I think I now had like a bunch of women watching me closely and holding me accountable, I think, to being like a better version of myself, being a better dad, being a better parent for, a girl. And in that upcoming year, someone introduced me to Fair Play, a couple of the other content creators that I followed. And as they shared that with me, I gave my reflections on it. Like, that was when I started talking about mental load and where I saw that I was adding it for my partner, where I was seeing it in places I hadn't before. And having like a new understanding of the weight that I think my wife Alyssa experiences, as well as a lot of other women around the world. I think I made one video where I was like assimilating like being a man-child to AA, how they go to AA and they say, hi, my name's Zach and I'm an alcoholic. Hi, Zach. But as a man-child. And so then I made that one video as like a one-off. And then I really liked the almost concept of it, is that like, I don't know if I'll ever make it to evolved man-child or just man.
Yeah.
And I feel like as much as I've made, I think I'm on part 157 now, I keep discovering where it's like, it's a never ending game. I'm still going to be adding it to her. She's still going to be adding it for me. And I'm definitely starting to notice where we're adding it for each other and adjusting for each other. The mental load will be held by somebody. The question is who.
But tell us about mental load. So, I mean, for those that aren't aware, what exactly would you describe mental load? How would you describe it?
The simplest answer, I think, is just it's the stuff that we think about. But I think more importantly, it's the thing that we think about that keeps us up at night, that we're thinking about in the car, in the shower, if we're stressed out. It's typically the things that feels like our lives are just like a bunch of like keepy uppy, right, from Bluey, with the balloons. Yeah. And there's just so many balloons, and we know that we're going to drop one somewhere. So it's like the more fragile balloons that we're afraid are going to pop, that those are the heaviest, I think, of the mental load. So both of you guys are dads. I mean, I think it's our kid is going to a birthday party on Saturday, and our wives might be a little bit more concerned. What are we getting them? Is it wrapped? If it's not wrapped, when are we getting it? Where are we getting it from? Do they actually care about the thing, or is it something stupid that they're not going to like and toss aside? Are they going to be offended by it? Mental load in that example, as it kind of evolved, started to turn into emotional labor as well. It's like some of it is almost like over the top, but I think a lot of it's like an appropriate level of worry that I think a lot of women do in thinking about how other people are going to react emotionally to things. And I think similarly, in a lot of places, emotional labor is happening, and the question is who's bearing it.
I think you're 100% right. I know, like in my relationship, my wife is the present giver, and it's a great example because she's the one that goes, okay, so the kids are going to a birthday party. What have you organised? I'm like, I haven't done anything. She's like, well, here's the present. Here's the wrapped gift. Here's the bow on top. Here's the address. Here's the name of the parents. Here's the name of the kid. Your turn. Go. I've done everything else. You go and do it. And I think that's a case in a lot of relationships.
And then when you get to the party, you don't even know what the present is.
But I think in that case, a lot of men, I guess they take their partners for granted, and that's a marriage killer.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know if this phrase is as present over in Australia with you guys, but happy wife, happy life, I think, is something that you hear a lot. I think it breeds some of this like mental load that ends up on the women in a lot of ways, because it starts out with, hey honey, like let's do whatever you want to do. I want to make you happy. And at first that starts looking like, yeah, you choose the restaurant, we'll go wherever you want to go. And what it eventually turns into, as they continue to make more and more choices in our partnership and our marriage and our family, at some point that starts to look like they have to make the decision, because we've got this new learned helplessness, or this like evolved learned helplessness around, I can't make that choice because she's going to have some kind of preference about that. And I'm unwilling to either get flack for making a wrong choice. And they've gotten used to both having control, which I think they like, but at the same time, that becomes a burden. And I think the transition of when it becomes a luxury to get to choose all the things to it becoming a burden is a really quiet, like unseen line that shifts maybe could be months in or could be years into a relationship.
Well, because Christo, you sort of have this, and I don't think I'm speaking out of school, but you've sort of got this with your wife, because she wants you to make more decisions now. She feels that she has to make the decisions because you sit on the fence a lot.
Yeah, look, okay, yes, and no, you're not speaking out of school, but yeah, I grew up with a mother that was fairly heavy.
Dominant,
thank you, that's the word that I'm looking for. Heavy's probably not the right choice of words, but she was dominant. So then, there was a lot of choices made for me. So you just end up you fall into this trap of just becoming lazy, I guess, because you're just like, oh well, someone else will make the decision for me and they'll just do it. And I guess I've been in that position in my marriage where she's just like, well, you make the fucking decision, you do it, you've got a brain, why do I have to do the mental load, which is what you were talking about.
Curious, did you guys find me because one of your wives shared one of my videos with you?
Shut up.
I mean, look, I'm almost certain that's how I came across you. My wife sent me something, and one of the ones that resonated, I can't remember what it was, but it was something like asking your wife for something. For argument's sake, it was something like, "Hey, babe, have you seen my sunglasses?" And I hadn't
seen the keys.
Yet.
The keys was the one.
The keys. Yeah. And it was like, I mean, that resonated with me so much, because so many times I'll be sitting at my desk, before I've even looked, I've yelled out to the wife, "Hey, have you seen my keys, or have you seen my sunglasses?" And and now after your content, I'm like, hang on, why am I transferring that load to her when I haven't even made the effort to look yet? Like it borders on laziness, but it's so subconscious and built in that I wasn't even aware I was doing it until I saw your content.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have really resonated. A lot of women have really resonated with the open browser tab analogy that I've made. So if we look at my computer right now, you can probably see it looks like 20, 30 tabs open. I can all see their little icons, so it's somewhat, I kind of know what's where. But the way I think of it is, let's think of your brain as an internet browser, and you don't know where your keys are. You know the information is somewhere to be had, and so she has a tab open in her brain, which is where the keys are. You also could open your laptop. You could open it up. You could turn it on. You could turn on Chrome or whatever you use, and then open up, do a little search on the website, and then find it, which is that, in that analogy, that's you looking around in multiple places to try to find where they are. Mm-hmm. But you're thinking, it would be more efficient for her to just check one of the tabs that she already has open. What we miss is the cost of switching tabs. I know personally, on the internet, if I'm on one tab, I'm doing something, I get sidetracked, or I see an email come in and I switch over to that other tab, I'm probably not getting back to what I was doing for another 20 minutes, especially if I have enough browser tabs open that like I could get lost in 5 other tasks before I end up back to where I started. So as much as it's personally efficient for us to ask our wives where something is, if we think that they might have the answer pretty quickly, in the macro, between the two of us, it's less efficient for us to ask them and for them to get lost for 20 minutes on something else. But 2, also, a lot of times, like another example was, I came really close to sending the text, and then I decided to, search myself, was where our vaccination records were. I think I was filling out a doctor's form or something, and need to know, did she have her most recent COVID booster? I knew she had something. I forget which one it was. And so I went to email Alyssa, and I was like, wait a second, even more for the efficiency of us for the future is I know these records exist somewhere. Where the heck are they? Thought about it for a minute, and then said, I'm pretty sure there's an app that we have through her doctor's office. I can go into there and think it's actually similar to mine. I might just have to switch accounts within it. And then I actually discovered where they were. So in the future, rather than having to go back to her and having learned the helplessness of going to her and thinking, she knows where the vaccination records are and are sending a screenshot probably. Now I know where it is too, and I can go do that myself.
Although I've got to say, there's nothing worse than when you do take on that moment and you go, I'm going to search for the keys and I'm going to find them, and then you can't find them, and she'll walk into the room and go, hey, what are you looking for? And you go, keys. And she goes, it's right there. I'm like, fuck.
It's that efficiency thing too, because I don't want to justify it, but in my mind, in those moments, I'm like, it sounds horrible, but why waste my time looking if she knows exactly where they are? And I get it now that, look, it's more efficient for me, but then the load is on her to stop what she's doing, transition out of what she's doing, just to even tell me where they are. So that's why this is important, because like say in the long term, it's going to be more efficient because I'm going to get more diligent with where I put my keys when I put them down somewhere, rather than put them down somewhere. She picks them up, moves them into the place they should be. So, like I say, I was always under the guise of efficiency, but at the end of the day, like you say, it's not actually going to be efficient for both of us.
Yeah, totally.
How big a man-child were you?
Probably one of my more embarrassing moments I'll share is as I had first started making content on TikTok, and I had my first probably 10, 20, 30,000 followers. I made this video. I don't know if you guys remember the song Hot Girl Shit by Megan Stallion, but I decided to make a hot dad shit. It was like a 15-second clip of me vacuuming and wiping down counters and doing dishes. And Alyssa called me out and she said, I don't remember the last time I've seen you actually break out a vacuum. And so I realized I was doing it for the camera. There was one of those moments where I was like, wow, I am a total asshole for trying to look the part when in fact I am bluffing. And to answer your question, how much of a man-child I was, I thought that was something that I did do typically more on my own. And it was like a normal thing. But like when I broke that down with her, she was like, yeah, like I pretty much have to tell you when things are starting to look a little grubby for you to like notice and or break out the vacuum. It's like this little Swiffer vacuum too. It's like the easy one. And so I think when she called me out on that, I was definitely defensive up front. I was like, no, like all these women on TikTok think I'm a great person. Therefore, I must be, because what I show them is totally real life all the time. There are a handful of moments where I think as I've made content, as I've asked Alyssa to like look it over sometimes when I feel like I might be on the edge of the truth or something, they've led to a lot of really good conversations of me identifying how much I've missed or how much like it's kind of inaccurate what I'm saying.
So what about your childhood? Was were your parents, did they shift the mental load in their relationship? Is that where we get it from? Are we emulating our parents?
That's a good question. So I think my dad did a good job in terms of like, so my mom was not the sole income earner, but she was the main breadwinner in our home. So I think I grew up in a household where I didn't necessarily see the man as being the one that just brought home the money. He did chores. He did a lot of the domestic labor around the home. I've made one or two videos kind of calling him out. We went to a wedding last summer and he calls up me and my mom and my wife were in the cottage, and he was down at the beach, like probably 5-minute walk away. And he calls, hey, can you put your mom on? I was like, oh, what do you need me to ask her? And he said, where should I put the chairs? Because they're like, I guess they were nice chairs, and she seemed to have some sort of preference about like where she wanted them to stay, whether they could stay out on the beach because we're going to use them the next day, or if they need to go into the trunk of the car to keep them a little bit nicer. And I challenged him and I said, Dad, I'm not going to disturb her from her peaceful shower right now. I'm going to invite you to make an executive decision on this one. So I think there's a lot of moments where probably asking or doing things that seem a little silly for him to ask her preferences on. At the same time, there have been a handful of moments where I think I've made executive decisions and like communicated with Alyssa sort of like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. And sometimes it's a really good thing that I say that out loud to her first, because she's like, oh, no, don't do that. Let's do something else.
This is the Brown Park Podcast. Now, a word from our sponsors. This is the Brown Park Podcast with Christo and Dion. Now back to the show.
I think over time I've improved my ability to want to and feel the confidence for making executive decisions around the house. What used to be, hey, should I do this? How should I do this? It's sort of evolved into, hey, I'm thinking I'm going to do this today. Is this something important to you? How do you want it done? And then that's evolved into, hey, I'm thinking I'm going to do this way. I'm thinking this is a priority for me. Let me know if there's something else you'd rather have me do. And then sometimes like, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be working on this for 2 hours unless you would like me to do something else. So One of the videos that I really like that I want to make more of is like the evolution of mental load. Because I think there are some ways that we're totally putting it on our partner. I think I made the first one I made was about like not knowing that there was ketchup in the fridge. So the first one is, hey, honey, is there ketchup? And like turns out to be like right in front of us at eye level. The second one is looking around, not seeing any ketchup, and then asking, but not checking like another place in the kitchen first. And then the next step is like looking around, moving some stuff, not seeing it there, checking the cabinet, not seeing it there. Hey, Alyssa, do we have any ketchup? Then the next step is doing all those things and then adding it to the grocery list. And then the next step is doing all those things, adding it to the grocery list, and doing any other emotional labor that might go along with that. For example, I know my brother-in-law used to really love hot dogs. He's like an adult now, but my understanding is when he was a kid, he loved hot dogs. If there wasn't ketchup, problems could occur in the home. There could be meltdowns for this toddler. And so as a mom that might be going through that experience, or a parent, right, you're thinking, we're probably going to have hot dogs again Friday. If there's no ketchup, we're going to have a small toddler meltdown. Therefore, I need to do some of the parent math. I need to get to the store before this time or order it or have it picked up. Oh, and we get soccer practice that day. So I don't know if we'll be able to do it that. So like doing some of the mental math around like, how do we get catch up before possible meltdown happens? So I think those are sort of that's the gradient of mental and emotional labor that we can be doing for any given task.
Like I was recently watching Mad Men, right? And at that particular point in time, the man in the house made the majority of the decisions. I mean, obviously watching Mad Men is horrific the way women were treated back then. But in the house, on the home front, I feel like times have changed. The women are the decision makers in the relationship now for a lot of things and in a lot of households. Would you agree, or would either of you disagree?
You can go ahead, Dion.
I'll let you. Well, I mean, I was just thinking about it when Zach was talking about saying to your wife, "I'm going to make an executive decision on something or whatever." Now, I was going to ask a question. I mean, so even saying that is telling them, shifting the mental load as well. I mean, by saying I've made an executive decision, I'm going to go, buy this picture for the house. By doing that, I mean, obviously they need buy-in, but is that shifting the mental load to them for them to ultimately then still make the decision?
Yeah, I think it probably depends on what the item is. I think, if it's buying a picture to put on a wall, I know my wife would absolutely want to be included in that decision for something that she's going to look at long term, versus if it's the afternoon and there's a couple grocery need to do right now in our season of life. Going to the grocery store is like a fun sensory experience for our toddler. So we go there for fun. I literally went to Walmart today. We got the pickup order, and then me and my toddler walked around Walmart for like 90 minutes, just like smelling candles and touching pillows and saying names of sports stuff. So coming back to the question, if it's the afternoon and I know she might want to do one or two things, I might just say, "Hey, listen, we're going to go to the store. We're going to disappear for a couple hours. If you want some time to yourself, do you want to come or do you want to stay?" Like, yes, I think I am putting a little bit of mental load on her in giving her options. However, I think also like just making a parenting decision and choosing whether it's worth communicating about. Some things that I think probably are not worth communicating about, like, "Hey, I'm going to go change the toilet paper roll in the bathroom," probably doesn't need to be communicated about. In our house, I would say, "Hey, I'm going to put ketchup on our grocery list just so you can check that box off if it was a box that was left unchecked." I think, so one of the solutions I kind of come to with a lot of the guys that I work with in our mental load mastery program is we have consistent, we call them boring meetings. Still trying to find a better title than that. Originally they were like relationship meetings, and Alyssa really didn't like the heaviness of that. It was like, ooh, we're going to go talk about our relationship. That doesn't sound fun. And so neither of us wanted to show up to those. So she started calling them boring meetings to take the heaviness out of it. And so in those times, one of the things I'm coaching them to do is they are writing down 4 agenda points to talk about sort of the operations around the home. And I think those are really good opportunities to talk about, well, what is worth talking about here? Do we trust you to manage getting the electrical fixed in your, like right now, there are 4 outlets that are just popped out of their sockets and the breaker is off in this room. And we have an extension cord, which is operating the ring light right now. I'm managing that entire situation. And I think for a lot of families, let's say it was a shared room and not my office, that might be a question of, okay, we obviously need to pay for an electrician. You manage the budget, so you might have to manage this. But at the same time, like this impacts, me more. How do we want to handle the management of getting the electrician, getting them paid? If they have to be here multiple days within the next 2 weeks, who's going to schedule it? If we need someone to be here for it, like how do we want to go about scheduling it? So I fully encourage people to have recurring meetings with their partner about operations. And I think when we talk about operations, it's pretty easy. And I think over time we can start talking about some of those things that a partner might start resenting us for like, "Hey, every time you bring our kid to the store, you don't have to tell me. Every time you buy ketchup, you don't have to tell me. Like, I trust that you'll get catch up when necessary. So I think there's definitely that spectrum of like identifying how much mental load is being held. And sometimes I think our partners are going to want to let go of control and be like, yep, you actually don't have to talk to me about that. And I think that'll always be a fine line. And I think that's why it's worth consistently having that idea of like just recovering it's forever. It's not, the recovering man-child is forever. There's no evolved man-child. The mental load is always still going to be there. The question is, how much are we communicating about it? And are we starting to resent each other for it?
Number one tip that you would recommend for guys that come through your program that don't seem to be taking on much of the mental load of their wives, what would you suggest for them?
That's a tough one. It occurs to me as an oxymoron because for them to jump into my course, I think they are already at that point. So I'm going to adjust your question into maybe a guy that listened to the advice of his wife and booked a call with me and was like, nah, I'm good. The advice to that guy, I think, would be ask yourself and try to have some real conversations with your partner of like, is this sustainable? Because if it's not, like, you might be served the divorce papers in 2 years and have not seen it coming. And I think, there are a good handful of people that come to me because they're on the brink of divorce. Or I ask them, like, has divorce or separation been brought up in the past or in the recent past? A handful of them, it's a no. A handful of them, it's been brought up maybe in the heat of the moment and it's really scary and heart-wrenching. And that's kind of the kick that they needed to at least have a conversation with me, if not like dive in. Because I think from what I've heard, what I've seen in the comment section from a lot of women is that if they're asking, if they're on you and like trying to get you to change, they have hope that there's change coming and that you're going to continue to grow with them. If they've gotten quiet, that could very well be like a bad sign. Now, this is just kind of what I've heard. I don't know if it's like factual necessarily, but if they start getting quiet and they're just like taking the hits and like they're taking on the mental load and they just don't care whether you really participate anymore, it's like a calm before a possible divorce storm is kind of what I've heard and seen.
So if they're forwarding on your content, then that's a good thing because they're open. And
as much as that might feel weird to like say and hear, here's furthermore why that's accurate. In 2019, Alyssa found an article, something about mental load, domestic labor, etc., and she was afraid to share it with me. Coming back to your question, Christo, about how much of a man-child was I, one of her colleagues showed it to her. She's like, oh, like Zach would get this. And the reason I can talk about it right now is because this got brought up maybe 6 months ago. She's like, there's something I shared with you a long time ago. I don't know what it was, but I was pretty scared of sharing it with you, that you were going to get defensive, that you're going to get annoyed and pissed off. And so I would say furthermore, if they're sharing it with you, they're either trust that there's enough good in you or like enough vulnerability in you that you can hear it, and or they feel like they're on a level of communication that it could make a difference. I can't tell you how many comments I get, which is, how do I get this on his For You page? How do I send this to him without sending it to him? How do I get him to see this organically without me sharing with them? Because they know that they can't, their partner won't be able to hear it directly from them.
What would Alyssa's, your partner's biggest complaint about you be now?
I think every once in a while, I'd probably make a few too many executive decisions that she wishes she was included on a little bit more. I probably swung the pendulum a little bit far, but as long as I think we're having our consistent conversations, our boring meetings, I think we talk about a lot of the things that we need to. I think I've swung the pendulum a little bit far, but at the same time, I think I'm probably doing good things so that I can learn from them, so that I can teach them and, talk about them. So I'm not upset about those complaints that she has about me right now.
Well, you are Real Zach Think Share on Instagram and your socials, or you can just go and try and find you on Zachary Watson. And ladies, if you're listening to this, just share his content because it does work and it's very good.
It really does. But hey, it's changed the way I operate in my household, and I know it's the same for Christo there. So it's be open if you receive the content because it's good stuff and there's lots to learn.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And we'll put all the links to your social media and to your courses and everything in the show notes of this podcast, so people can check that out from there. But yes, Zach, thanks for your time, man.
Well, thank you guys again for having me. This is super refreshing talking with guys on a podcast about this rather than with women. It's a totally different flavor.
The Brown Podcast.
Why are you happy?
Because I don't want to